After the doctor explained what Amara had asked for, Daniel stood beside the hospital bed in complete disbelief. He looked at his wife and asked why she would ever think of leaving the hospital in the middle of labor just to prepare his food. Amara looked at him quietly. She explained that she had always believed it was her responsibility to make sure her husband was comfortable, no matter what she was going through. Daniel listened, but he still didn't understand why everyone was making such a big issue out of it. To him, there was nothing unusual about what Amara had said. Growing up, he had watched his father run the home in exactly that way. His father believed that a man was the head of the house and that his wife was responsible for taking care of the home, the children, and her husband. When his father spoke, everyone listened. When he was angry, nobody questioned him. And whenever there was a problem in the home, his mother was expected to adjust herself to whatever her husband wanted. Daniel had grown up believing that was simply how marriage worked. A man was supposed to be in control. A woman was supposed to respect her husband and take care of the home. If a man shouted at his wife, Daniel believed the man had a reason. If a husband gave an instruction, he believed the wife was supposed to obey. He had never stopped to question any of it. To him, he wasn't mistreating Amara. He was simply being a husband. But the doctor was deeply concerned. He reminded Daniel that his wife was in active labor, and that what she needed at that moment was support, not pressure. Daniel became quiet. For the first time, he looked closely at Amara. He noticed how exhausted she was. He noticed the tears in her eyes, and he began to wonder whether there were things she had been enduring that he had never paid attention to. Before he could say anything, a nurse entered the room. She announced that someone was asking for Amara. Daniel looked toward the door. Then a familiar voice came from the corridor. Daniel's eyes widened. He hadn't expected to hear that voice in the hospital. It was his mother. And the moment she walked into the room, everything was about to change. Daniel's mother walked straight toward Amara. She had been speaking with her on the phone since the beginning of the labor. Amara had called her mother-in-law before leaving for the hospital and told her that the labor had started. She had also told her that she was afraid because the contractions were becoming stronger. The older woman had stayed in contact with her throughout the journey, and repeatedly she had asked the same question, "Is your husband there yet?" Each time, Amara had given her the same answer. "No, Mama, he hasn't arrived." Even while on her way to the hospital, the older woman kept calling to check, and every time she asked whether Daniel had arrived, the answer remained the same: "No." So, when she finally walked into the hospital and saw her son standing there, she was shocked. She looked at him. Then she looked at Amara lying on the bed, and something changed in her face. She couldn't understand how her son could stand there while his wife was in labor and still allow her to worry about whether his food had been prepared. She looked at Daniel with disappointment. "Is this how you treat your wife?" Daniel tried to explain, but his mother raised her hand. "Keep quiet." He stopped. "I am still talking." The room became silent. His mother looked at him with tears in her eyes. She told him that she had never raised him to become this kind of man. She reminded him that she had spent years trying to protect him from the mistakes of his father. She had hoped that her son would grow up and become a different kind of husband, a better man. But now, standing in that hospital room, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Daniel tried to defend himself. He said he never knew Amara felt this way. He said he didn't know that he was hurting her. And then he finally admitted something that even he had never really thought about before. He said he had learned all of this from his father. That was the only kind of marriage he learned growing up. He had grown up watching his father control everything in the home. He had watched his mother obey. He had watched her cook, clean, serve her husband, and put his needs before her own. And whenever his father became angry, Daniel had believed that his father had every right to shout because, in his mind, the man was the head of the family. He thought that was what being a husband meant. His mother stared at him. Then she slowly shook her head. Daniel lowered his voice. He said he was sorry. He said he honestly didn't know he was hurting Amara. He had simply repeated what he had seen all his life. His mother looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something that made him completely silent. She told him that what he had learned from his father was not love, it was pain, and she knew that better than anyone, because she had been the woman who suffered through it. But before she could say anything more, Amara suddenly cried out. The baby was coming. Everyone rushed toward her. The doctor and nurses immediately began preparing for the delivery. Daniel stood frozen beside the bed. His mother looked at him, and for the first time in his life, Daniel began to see his father through his mother's eyes. But there was still one question he had not asked. If his mother had suffered so much because of his father's behavior, why had she never told him the truth about what she went through? And the answer to that question was about to change everything.